Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Red Dot Forum Camera Talk. I am your co-host, David Farkas. I'm joined, as always, by Josh Lehrer.
Evening, everybody.
Also, as always, we've got Jose Rivera producing the show for us.
Hello, guys.
And welcome back. We were just here a week ago, so we're doing back-to-back episodes like the old days when we first started out.
Oh, I'm trying to forget those times.
Yep.
That was exhausting.
The before times.
That's right.
So we're back with kind of an interesting episode. Josh, you want to kind of explain the concept here?
So we get flack sometimes for kind of getting hooked and stuck on the newest of the new. So whatever is the new hot flavor of the week, SL2S, M11, 35 Apo, things that are brand new, sometimes hard to get. And we get a lot of questions about some of Leica's past products. And of course, then we'll dive into something vintage and go completely the other direction.
The other way, yeah.
So this episode is actually dedicated to all of the previous generation cameras, or most of the previous generation cameras that we see on the marketplace still pre-owned, sometimes every now and then brand new.
Now when you say previous generation, we're talking about the immediate past.
Yes, this episode is dedicated basically to the original title. I think was One Step Back, which was kind of lame, but it basically means one step backwards from what's current. So as you'll see tonight, we're going to talk about a lot of the different cameras and sort of where they sit in 2022, who they're right for, what they do well, what they may not do well, all these things, all the questions you guys will have and things we're going to talk about, and how they fit into the modern Leica product catalog.
I like it.
Yes.
And as evidenced also, I mean, we actually have a very good selection of these cameras. We have almost everything here on the table from the previous generation. So we're going to be talking about the M, specifically the M10 generation, as well. I guess the Monochrome's always kind of a half step back always anyway. Because the current monochrome camera is the M10 monochrome, even though we have the M11 color camera. So we're going to be talking about the M monochrome type 246, which came from the 240 generation, was sort of that halfway between. And then we've got the previous generation Q, which is just the Q, type 116, and its various flavors and iterations. We've got the SL type 601, which was also just the first SL. And we've got the S Type 007, which was the 3rd generation in the S lineup, and now we're at the 4th generation with the S3. And then also, it's a little gray area, but we had a lot of questions before the show,
Yes.
which was about the CL. Now, the CL, technically, there's no replacement for this. It's not a generation back, but it is recently complicated. We'll get into that.
We'll get into that, don't worry. At least to the best of our knowledge.
So, that's where we're going to go.
Yeah.
If you have any questions specific to what we're going to talk about tonight, drop it in the comments. We're keeping an eye on that and can get to your questions. So as we go through, you might spark an idea, debate. The usual caveat applies, right?
Yes. Well, which would probably be less relevant for this episode than usual, but
Yeah.
as always, we do not know what Leica's coming out with next. We don't know future products, future firmware, future anything. So you're welcome to ask whatever you like, but we generally do not address questions based on, when is such and such coming out, or when is Leica going to insert something here?
Right.
It's things that we just don't cover because we are as excited as everyone else to see what's coming next, but we do not know. So we cannot talk about it because we don't know. And we won't speculate because that just gets us in trouble.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
I think we should, well, I want to start with, I feel like the Q, but maybe the 601. What do you, or the S? There's so much to talk about.
There's so much to talk about. What would you guys like us to talk about first?
No, they're not gonna know. They don't know what we want.
Now we have to wait like 20 seconds.
Yeah,
for them-
exactly. No,
for you to
I'd
get
say
that.
we start with the Q because that's probably one of the more one of the most universally understood, but also misunderstood in 2022. I think.
Do you?
Yes. So
Okay. Let's
a
hit it.
question that we got actually, which I think is a great way to open the show, Jose. If you could ask the question from Daryl, because I really think it ties in perfectly with what we're going to talk about.
Yep, definitely. Let's go ahead and start with that one. So Daryl asks, the Q, if I'm reading the tea leaves properly, is gaining in popularity. Why do you think this camera has everyone singing its praise years after introduction and being discontinued?
Yeah, that's a great question. That ties in with what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and let me just give just a little bit of background on the Q if you're not familiar with it.
Yeah.
So this is it. So the Q, and maybe I'll have Josh hold it since he's got the, oh, I do have a close-up camera over here, but you can
I have
hold it
it here.
too.
Yeah.
Move the adapters.
There we go. A nice clean shot. There she is, our well-loved Q.
Yep, so this is a Q, type 116, just the Leica Q for short.
Just David.
There we go.
There you go.
Hey, there I am. So that is the Leica Q that you see right there. This was a first for Leica. This is basically an all-in-one compact camera, if you will, but with a full-frame sensor. So we got a full-frame 24-megapixel sensor in there, paired with that amazing 28mm f1.7 Summilux with the macro functionality. Show them that, which is very cool.
So basically, I got to do this like kind of.
There you go.
There we go.
Yeah, it's very cool. And that's carried over to the Q2 as well. But this camera also has a 3.68 megapixel built-in electronic viewfinder, a touchscreen interface right there. Yeah, that touch. And so this is an interesting surprise from Leica when they admitted that when they first kind of tried this out in 2015. This came out in June of 2015, and it was kind of an experiment, and they thought it was going to really just be a niche camera. So they only thought they'd sell 5,000 to 6,000 of these in its lifespan. And over the ensuing, 4 years?
5 years.
5 years?
4.5.
4.5 years. They ended up selling more like 60,000.
Yeah.
So 10 times the amount that they originally planned. And we always said it was, the popular kid because everybody loved the Q.
Yeah.
And I would say that certainly going back a few years, just about every single member of our team personally owned a Q.
Yeah. Yes.
Like at one
it was
point
like
or
a
another.
very popular Leica store employee
Totally.
personal camera that they own themselves.
Yes. And we have a lot of great content on Red Dot Forum. So I have a full review of the Q that I did in Berlin back in 2015. And then Kirsten actually took this camera across 5 countries, one camera across Europe, and she took just the Q. So she has a great travel log story there. Yeah. So we've got a lot of interesting content on Reddit forum on the site about it.
What's amazing to me is how modern the original Q still feels 7 years after its release. More so, I think, than anything else from that time period. Even the SL601, the Q feels modern in terms of its operation and its speed and its, of course, its image quality,
Electronic
build
viewfinder.
quality, and the viewfinder. Yeah, I think the viewfinder is probably the biggest gap between the Q and the Q2.
Because they went from LCD to OLED.
So that's, but even so, it's a nice finder. And the reality is, the value trajectory of pre-owned Q2s has been not only flat for the last couple of years, but actually slightly increasing.
Yeah.
You would think
of
that as,
Q2s, you said?
of Qs.
Of Qs.
So you'd think that as the Q116 got older, they would start to drop in price, and there's certainly been some dips, but overall they've held strong.
Sure.
Because they haven't gotten any worse.
Image quality is still the same. And, I just had this conversation yesterday with somebody who was looking at the possibility of going from a Q2 to Q because they like, and you can hold that one up, the silver one, which
Well, we
haven't gotten there yet.
We
Okay.
haven't gotten there yet.
But, when we said, okay, what are we missing out on? And the reality is that at 24 megapixel full frame, the original Q has roughly the same low light capability as the Q2, just at a lower resolution.
Yeah.
The lens, the same. The
Well,
macro functionality, the same.
I'm going to interrupt you because to talk about the lens,
Yeah.
the lens on the Q and the Q2, which is the same,
Yeah.
is pretty much equal to or close to the best of 28M.
Yeah, the 28 Summilux.
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite as good as the 28 Lux on an M10R, but it is
very close.
phenomenal, especially on the original Q where it's not being taxed quite as much
Sure.
by the sensor.
Yeah, of course.
It really, considering the fact that the lens is stabilized and it has the macro functionality and it has autofocus, the fact that it is as good as it is amazing. And one of the advantages or disadvantages of the lack of interchangeable lenses on the Q is they can incorporate a lot of the lens and the lens mechanics into the camera body
Yes.
because it's all connected. And that allows the lens to perform as high as it does while being as small and light as it is.
Yeah, it's completely optimized.
Yeah, exactly. So I see the work people are doing now with the original Q, and I'm like, the sensor is super modern. Again, 24 megapixels, which is more than enough for even a 20 by 30 print. Maybe not if you crop a lot, but depends on.
I'd say that's the only thing that you're really sacrificing when it comes to the sensor versus the Q2, which is using the digital crop modes, because that is a 28 that's fixed. So the only way to get 35 and 50 is to use the digital crop function by hitting the little button on the back.
Yeah.
But you're dropping pretty significantly. You're going from 24 to 10 megapixel?
Yeah, something like that. Something that's not that
it's not
usable,
great.
really. So at least not for a print.
But if you are going to use the camera as a 28 and just get closer, I don't see much of a downside because 24, that was the standard for a very long time in the Leica lineup, right? Ever since the
240.
the M-Type 240 came out in 2012, up until I guess the M10R, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were at 24 that whole time, and only recently with the M10R, the SL2 and the Q2 have we really taken, and the M11 now, have we taken that jump in megapixels.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, and we have 20 by 30 inch sample prints to show this, the original Q, and we'll talk about the SL601, look phenomenal at 20 by 30.
Yeah.
So, I think it's a matter of figuring out what you need. Another interesting advantage that maybe we're not talking about is the extra batteries. This is a BP DC12.
Yes.
For the Q, versus the the Q2 uses the BP SEL5.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, forgetting size, cost. These extra batteries are half the price.
Less. Third. They're a third the price.
Third the price of these batteries. Now, that may or may not mean anything to you, but
Well, that's the value proposition for any pre-owned product, especially one that's starting to see depreciation. A lot of depreciation isn't just the cost of the product itself, the camera, let's say, but at the cost of the ancillary accessories. So you buy an SL601, you're still having to get a $285 battery. You buy a Q116, and there's third-party Panasonic batteries available for 50 or 60 bucks, brand
Sure.
new or
Yeah.
less.
Yeah.
There's a lot of used Q accessories out there because the trick,
Grips, thumbs ups.
the trick is if the accessories stay the same between the previous version and the next version, they don't go down in value. But when the accessories change,
Yes.
the Q2 has a new thumbs up and a new grip and a new thumb support.
Yep.
The older accessories will go down,
Yes.
and that gives people buying the previous model the opportunity to get the grips and the thumbs ups and all that's the batteries for less,
A bargain.
which is cool. Well, bargain is relative, but
A relative bargain.
yes. And David started to touch on.
Yeah.
One of the other cool things that the Q brought to the table that the Q2 really hasn't realized yet, and maybe one day, but we don't know, is variants. I don't mean necessarily limited editions. We've seen the Daniel Craig Q2 and the 007 Q2 and something else. The original Q came in later on in its life cycle in a few different colors that weren't limited in the sense of they weren't numbered. They didn't sell as many because they came later, but we have a few of them here. So of course you've seen.
So by definition, it's just it's not that they were limited to any set quantity.
Yes.
These other colorways or finishes were basically just there's less in the marketplace now because they just made less of them.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So first we'll show real quick. Get the close up here, Jose. Here's the original Q in black, right? Then we've got the first variation well, I don't know if they're going in order here, but this is the titanium gray Q. So this is kind of similar to what we saw on the M6 titanium. It's not made from titanium. It's like a titanium gray finish. So it's a painted finish. Super cool. It's got the red
I love
lettering.
the panda dials there.
The red lettering here, the contrasting black dials, and the titanium finish. I love the way this looks. I think this is sick. And then we saw the silver Q. This is my favorite, I think, limited edition, or not limited, excuse me, variation, because even the lens is silver. Now, most of the time, the lens was black. So this reminds me almost like of a silver M6, something along those lines. Super, super cool, beautiful. And these are actually quite hard to find in really nice shape like this one is, which is pretty nice. And then the last variation I have here is a bit more than just a color change. This is the QP. This is probably the most desirable of the Q variants because not only did this incorporate the matte black finish, which is just super, super cool, with the P-style script on the top plate and no dot, they also changed the power switch to be a little bit more ergonomic and less prone to accidentally changing it. So this is really...
And it's got the red markings on the lens.
Yeah, this is like
too.
the ultimate version of the Q, which is the QP. That's assuming you like the black finish. Obviously, the silver finish and the titanium finish are unique in their own right, depending on what you like.
Very nice.
Yeah. So that's one of the other big advantages of going with the original Q platform is you have access to the unique finishes that were available. Try to find a 007 Q2 now and forget it. They're like ridiculous amounts of money.
And the only variant now with the Q2 is the Q2 Reporter, which again is not limited. It's just limited production.
Yeah, the Q2 Reporter, which has been out since November, has been
trickling.
harder to get than almost anything else. So in theory, it will not be limited, but it is quite hard to get.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about Q2. We're talking about Q.
But there's also no plans at Leica that we know of to make a silver Q2. So the only current way to get a silver Q of any variant is the silver Q116.
Correct. And it is beautiful. These are all, cameras that we've taken on trade-in, and to see them look this nice,
Really nice.
is great. Because honestly, a lot of the Qs were used. I mean, do you see
show
our
that
Q?
one. Yeah.
You saw our Q here.
This
look
one's
at
actually ours.
This is our demo Q.
Show the writing on the back here.
Yeah, that is this is all I've seen worse for sure, but this is pretty well loved.
Yeah, you know the one that's worse?
With that.
The other demo one that we decided this one is the nicer one.
Yeah, there you go.
This is actually the better of the two.
Yeah.
But we still have two of these in-house.
Even if you have an M11 or something current in the product portfolio and you just want to get something that fits with the Leica look in terms of performance, image quality, that's not going to let you down, but you don't want to go and buy a Q2 for whatever, $6,000, get a Q.
I've also heard comments, and this was some of the logic between, going, Leica made two moves to answer this question. And the concern was, I don't need 47 megapixels for street photography. I don't need 47 megapixels for event photography. So Leica answered that on the SL2 by coming out with the SL2S, when going from 47 back to 24 again. And on the M11, offering the variable resolution sensor So you didn't always have to shoot at 60. You can shoot at 36 or at 18,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The Q offers that option. And I know a lot of people who stuck with their original Q and decided not to go to a Q2. Some of it was actually because they wanted less resolution for doing street photography where they're shooting a high quantity of images and they don't want to clog up their computer.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's reasons.
You could get an original Q and an L Pro 52 and just use it for macro. Like that's, let's say you spend 3,200 on a Q, whatever the L Pro is, a few hundred on the L Pro, and now you've got a really, really capable super macro setup.
Sure.
You should watch our macro episode if you haven't seen it. That would be a great way if you want to get into Leica macro without going crazy.
And also, just as I'm remembering, another modern feature is, besides still having the same resolution electronic viewfinder, still having a touch screen, still being responsive, 10 frames a second. It also does have Wi-Fi, so it still works with the Photos app the same as the Q2 would.
And one of the, I haven't seen the question about it, but I'll preemptively address this concern. One of the concerns a lot of people have about pre-owned Qs is dust on the sensor. Being a camera that's not weather sealed or dust sealed, I always get this question, which is, let's say we're selling a pre-owned Q. Oh, is there dust on the sensor? Now, as a rule, as part of my workflow for taking in a pre-owned Q, I always check the sensor to see if there's dust on it. And I would say 1 out of every 30 or 40 does have to go back to customer care, which is honestly less than I see on like M10s that have disgusting sensors or other cameras with interchangeable lenses. Now, of course, I realize you can't clean the sensor of the Q yourself, so dust on the sensor is more concerning.
Yeah.
But from the intake that I see, which is a lot, and I test every single one, it's really not that much. And you never have to doubt me, or you can check the receipts, if you will. If you watch our website and you see Qs come up, if you see one that had a recent CLA service, most likely it's because it had dust on the sensor. And 90% of the pre-owned Qs we get don't need a service because they don't have dust on the sensor and they work fine. So I don't think it's as huge of a problem as people think. I do not recommend taping up the microphone and speaker holes in your camera. The residue and the grossness that it leaves behind will do more to hurt the market value than the cost of getting the sensor cleaned if dust gets on the sensor.
Sure.
So again, I'm not saying it's not an issue because it definitely has happened. I've seen it. I haven't seen any that are really bad, but I've certainly seen Qs that needed a cleaning. But it's such a small percentage that it's not something that I'm overly concerned about. And it's just, I don't know. If I have a couple specks of dust on any camera, I'll just take it out in Lightroom, call it a day. Anyway,
All right.
I wanted to address that. Another thing we should talk about the Q before we go on to the next one is the firmware.
Yes, for sure. Bring that up real quick.
One of the things that we talk about, we did a whole 1.25 part episode about it, is firmware. One of the advantages of getting a beyond end of life Leica digital camera is it is as mature as possible for firmware. Today, one of the things I did as preparation for this show was actually backtracking every single firmware update that Leica did for all the cameras we're going to talk about. And it kind of brought me down memory lane because I forgot how much room to grow, let's say, the original Q had when it first came out. I mean, it didn't shoot DNG only. I forgot that. Like, it shot DNG plus JPEG when it came out, and we were begging Leica to allow us to shoot DNG only. And I think there was, let's see, there was...
Do you want to, here, you could just
1,
screen grab
2,
this.
3...
Yeah, just show here.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we're not going to go through every single one of these.
Yeah, oh, you want to go to the screen?
Yeah, just go to the screen.
Yeah. So here, this is a very, we're not going to go through all this, but essentially this is me, start at the top. You know, we had image quality improvements.
Go to Josh.
Live,
Sorry.
live view improvements, DNG only, EVF extended, longer shutter speeds, better autofocus. I mean, there were tons and tons and tons of major improvements over the course of 3 years. The last one was 2018. And then there's a 3.1, which is not on here because it's just Photos app stuff. So we've had some serious improvements. So now the other benefit is getting a fully stable, mature camera that has all of the features that Leica can pack into it based on the hardware that it has and just get it and go. If you own a Q, you owe it to yourself to make sure that you're on firmware 3.1 or at least 3.0 to get all of these features like the favorites menu and additional customizable buttons and it's remembering the self-timer autofocus position, all these things that we asked for over the length of the Q2 or of the Q's
That's pretty
life
amazing.
cycle. Yeah, so it's one of the things that it's easy to forget, except now, of course, we have the M11, which has had some bugs. as all new Leica cameras do. But everybody likes to go crazy, like this M11, Leica screw this up. I'm like, whoa. You couldn't shoot DNG only on the original Q when it came out. You want to talk about...
I mentioned that in my review too. I'm like, why?
Yeah. So, Leica is not sitting on their hands. They are spending time and money polishing and maturing these cameras as they sort of live through their life cycle. And then it's always worth it to make sure you have your update. I mean, I hammer this home all the time, but yeah. Okay, that was a long rant. Any Q questions before we go on to the next one?
Yeah, I did want to just show them in case you want to do your own research here. So under Red Dot Forum, you can see that we've got the Q, and I actually called it a full frame mini M at the time, but just the flexibility of, and I actually, this was one of my highest pressure reviews because I only had one afternoon and evening to shoot all my test pictures. And then like one day to write the whole thing because I had a workshop immediately following. And I was able to go out and do all sorts of cool photography. Some of it was in my hotel, but some
I feel
of it's
like you
on
need
the
to do
street.
a 2022 Q116 review.
I mean, this was with,
What year was this?
this was 2015, June 2015.
7 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
So all this stuff, and it was really great in terms of, mixed lighting, low light, macro, everything it does well now, it did well then.
Yeah. And this is firmware 1.0. This is like
and this is,
OG.
and this was, just came out, that's ISO 12,500, which at the time was the best performing low light capability of any Leica at that time. So still, it's really, really good. And like that, my favorite shot of the thing, ISO 5000, handheld, no tripod.
Yeah, and they've made image quality improvements over firmware too. So you should go back and reshoot all these
I
pictures.
know, it's crazy, right?
That would be a fun project one day to like have you.
Well,
redo.
there's 100% crop.
And what ISO?
5,000 ISO.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
7 years ago, people.
Yep. Handheld.
That's sick.
So very, very cool. Oh, and I actually pushed this one stop in Lightroom, so it's equivalent to 10,000 ISO, which is bananas.
Yeah.
So still very relevant. The other one that you should check out under user reports is
That one right there.
yeah, this one here, which is 5 countries, 1 camera, travels with the Q, written by Kirsten, and you can see she also tested out a lot of the low light capabilities and just the flexibility of as a general travel camera, where she was, doing her Kirsten thing, and she did a great job. So you should definitely check this out as well if you're interested in to see what the Q can do in the right,
Even if you have a Q, this is inspiring.
Yeah, it's
get
great.
out and push it as far as it can go. It's very capable.
It is, yeah. I mean, that's the thing that I would say too. It is amazing how modern an experience it is 7 years after introduction.
That's one point.
Which leads me into
yes.
the next camera that
course.
is also the same age,
Mm-hmm.
sharing largely the same sensor architecture.
This is what pulled me away from the 007
This is it right here.
for a while anyway, which is the SL Type 601.
Love this.
This camera, man, I remember when it came out and it's a game changer.
It totally was.
The EVF, the quality of the EVF, the quality of the images, the speed, the autofocus, the customizable buttons. It was everything I ever wanted and then some. And still extremely capable. And I would say not quite as modern as the Q, only because the 4-button interface did get replaced. And so it does feel a little more dated. Although I'm so used to it because David and I both shot with the S system for so long. This camera is just as good as the Q from an image quality standpoint because it's basically the same sensor.
Yes. So the same ISO performance. And obviously, it's the first L-mount camera. So this is...
No, the first full frame.
Well, the full frame... Okay. The first full frame L-mount camera.
Getting yourself in trouble there.
Okay. So this was the... this is also a full frame, interchangeable lens, 24 megapixel, mirrorless camera.
Weather sealed.
Fully weather and dust sealed.
sealed.
Yep. With a 4.4 megapixel EVF, integrated EVF, with a very, very large magnification and eye relief, which has carried over to the SL2. The SL2 uses the same optical pathway in terms of, although did they upgrade it to glass? Or?
It's glass. In the
Yeah.
SL2,
So it's a little bit upgraded in the SL2, and they've gone from a 4.4 megapixel LCD EVF to a 5.68 megapixel OLED, which is, I mean, mind-blowing. But this one still...
This is still one of the best finders on the market
to this
today,
day,
especially for the money. GPS, something that they got rid of in its successor. So you can geotag your images without the Photos app, without any gimmicks. It just does it, which is fantastic. The SL601, to me, is a camera that a professional photographer could use today just fine. You know, it's got USB tethering. It's got HDMI out.
Listen,
show them all the ports on the side.
Well, I know a specific, before I do that, I know a specific photographer who is a professional, who works with us, who still continues to use his SL601.
Oh, Colin.
Colin,
yeah,
who's one of our photo guides, and he's the one leading our Moab astrophotography workshop that we have coming up in the fall. And you know what he shoots astrophotography with?
Now,
this.
What's really interesting is previously one of the challenges to getting an SL601 was lenses, right? Because you would get an SL601, $2,000 to $2,500, whatever, pre-owned, and that's a great deal. You wanted a Leica zoom lens, you had to get a 24 to 90, and even pre-owned, you're talking $4,000 plus. Now we have the 24 to 70 2.8, sub $3,000 lens new, sub $2,500 pre-owned.
So what does that put the whole package at here?
I mean, you could get this for less than $5,000, which I'm not saying is nothing, but you're getting a basically fully depreciated system, meaning the cost of ownership will be nominal, with pro-level performance, pro-level speed. You're now having access to, and this is really the key here, is this is the gateway to the L mount.
Yeah.
Meaning all the L mount lenses that Leica has ever made, TL, SL lenses, all of the L mount lenses made by Sigma and Panasonic, because Leica has supported the SL601's firmware to work with those lenses.
Yep.
All the adapters, M adapter L, R adapter L, S adapter L, will work on the SL601. So you have that vast
We need to show this
array.
because this is even more
We'll get there.
Yeah.
You have that vast array of lenses available to you without having to get into a $5,000-$6,000 SL2 or SL2S.
Yeah, and remember, when this came out in 2015, there was only one lens, which was the 24 to 90.
Yeah.
Along with the M adapter.
Yes,
right?
Which had existed already.
Yeah, the M adapter had existed already because of the TL, of the T701 and then the TL, and then this was called, early ones were M adapter Ts, then M adapter Ls.
I would say that it would be tough for me to get an M-Type 240 when I could get an SL with an M adapter L. Now I get it, the rangefinder experience is unique, but factoring that out,
That's interesting.
in terms of availability, functionality, durability, even if you never plan to get an L mount lens, an SL601 with an M adapter L is an incredible platform for M lenses in that price point, the $2,500 price point, which is about what 240s go for, or a little less.
The last serious landscape trip that I did before switching over to the SL2, I did with the SL601, which did a trip to Iceland in the Highlands and everything. The SL is still fully weather and dust sealed, and I had my full complement of SL lenses, and a few of those pictures actually, hang on my wall from that trip because they look great.
Yeah.
There's nothing to complain about when it comes to image quality from the SL601. I think what's really significant, the Q, you saw there was a pretty significant list of changes. Wait till you see how much Leica has supported the SL601.
It's amazing.
You got to see this.
It took me like 40 minutes just to put this together. So this is, Jose, can you go to there you go. So the first firmware update came a month after the camera came out. We had the magnification from the joystick button, image quality improvements, video improvements, some bug fixes. We got a major update about 4 months later for exposure compensation control, longer shutter speeds, faster shutter speeds, better autofocus, also DNG performance improvements, flash improvements, adapter improvements. Crazy. Huge update. Huge.
Major.
We got 2.1, which was mostly about image shuttle, Wi-Fi, and tethering performance, some bug fixes. 2.2, again, the same thing, because Leica was improving their tethering capability.
3.0 was
Then
huge.
in 2017, we got an update so big that David and I made a dedicated video about it, which is still on our channel. That was 3.0. So you had faster DNG writing, dramatically improved autofocus in terms of speed and operation, improved firmware for the lenses to make them faster. You could finally split DNGs and JPEGs on separate SD cards. You had more video control. You could do silent shutter, electronic shutter mode, meaning like an always-on type of setting instead of hybrid. You had exposure preview improvements, playback improvements. Keep going. Look, it's like 30 changes.
video
Yada, 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 yada,
resolution.
yada.
Yeah, no, this was a whole
We
video.
have a huge story on my forum about it. I'm not going to break it all down, but this was a massive update. It changed the camera. And this was, what year was that, 2018?
This was in
2017. So 2.5 years
Yeah.
after the camera came out, Leica basically said, they could have said, you're enjoying it, you're good. They said, no, we're going to make this 10 times better through firmware. And then we had a bunch of smaller ones after that with 51.4 focus improvements, some new power saving modes and white balance corrections. And then the SF60 flash came out. We got compatibility with that. And
it
then
kept
after
going.
that, most of the updates are for L-mount
yeah.
Alliance stuff. The last update was last year. It was less than a year ago
2021.
for a camera that came out in 2015 to make sure that it still works with all the L-mount lenses.
Isn't that amazing?
Video
That's-
features, L-log,
Seriously,
resolution. Yeah.
it's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
It's
so
crazy.
again, this is not you. If you looked at that list, you'd go, "Oh, that must be a camera that came out last year." No, it came out in 2015.
And I just want to say because right now as I would say, what you're watching us on now, all the cameras, these are SL2Ss. Before we had SL2Ss, we had SL2s. Before we had SL2s, we had all SL601s. If you look on the Reddit forum channel and look at any video prior to 2019, all of those videos, all those 4K videos were all shot on the SL601 using L-Log. Even the ones outside. So we did one, in Little Havana about the 28th Cimarron, or we did the SL versus the M. That was all done run and gun with the SL as a really capable video camera back starting in 2015. So the SL601 has been certainly, in our arsenal for quite a while. And I flip-flop back and forth between the S and the SL601 on a regular basis for doing, travel and workshops and things like that. So definitely an old favorite.
Yeah.
And one that still, again, feels very modern in terms of speed, responsiveness. Focus speed is very similar to the SL2. Obviously, the lenses perform the same, on one camera or the other. And it's just it's a pleasure to use. It's super rugged. I've put it through
I
the
think
ringer.
value for money, it's hard to beat.
And what is it, 2,500?
That's 2,500 or less. That's
That's
like a
nuts.
top market
That is
example.
nuts.
Jose, we've been talking a lot. Are there any questions we need to answer?
Let me check.
He's like, what?
We have not stopped. We're like on a freight train here.
We're in the 2015 mode.
That's
Not in
right.
the chat right now.
No? Anything in the
Comments here and there.
Okay. No, that's cool. Just making sure we don't want to hey, Sebastian's here. Hi, Sebastian.
Hey,
And Eli's here. Hi, Eli. I saw you said
seen a
hello.
lot of positive comments. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people in this chat have probably owned or have owned some of these cameras that we've talked
For
about.
sure,
So
for sure.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Should we move on to this bad boy? I think we should finish here.
Yeah.
On M.
Happy to do that.
All right, let's go.
That also is 2015.
This is 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna move on to
One of my all-time personal favorite cameras, especially when it comes to just absolute image quality and performance. So much so that it changed the way that I shoot pictures. That's a
game
bold
changer.
statement, right? And that would be the Leica S Type 007. No relation to the Special Agent, but this is the 007 or the third generation S camera. The first S camera was the S2. The second one was the S Type 006. And then the S007 came out in 2015. I was fortunate enough to beta test one of these guys, and that was the first time has another special significance for me. That was the first time I went to Iceland. And I went by myself. You can read about it on Reddit forum. I spent 10 days in country with the S007 with no backup, with beta firmware. I think I did like 3 or 4 firmware updates while I was there in the back of my car.
That's right.
It was fantastic. And this, again, put it through the ringer, did not baby it whatsoever. It got, stood under waterfalls, in waves, you name it. And what really blew me away and continues to blow me away is this camera has 15.5 stops of dynamic range on its 37.5 megapixel medium format sensor.
My dog is like, right under the
So,
table.
oh yeah, I see. I got the close up here, right?
There we go. Just giving some pets. Don't worry about me.
And so this is it's a pretty large opening here compared to full frame. I can't do two things.
No, you're good.
That's all right.
They get it. Yeah.
So this sensor in here is
Move
60%.
back a little bit. Go forward. There you go. You're just a little soft there.
Yep.
Got it.
Well, I'm working out,
Okay.
All right. So this is 60% larger than full frame. It's a 30 by 45 millimeter imaging area rather than the standard. Whoa.
Sorry. I was relocating the dog.
All right. Let's go back to me. That's super close. What happened? Okay. So this is 30 by 45 millimeter, which is much larger than 24 by 36. 37.5 megapixel, 6 micron pixel size. So that is the same pixel size as what was in the SL601, the Q116, and the M246 at the time, and it was pretty standard. The difference was this used the Max CMOS design architecture, which was designed with Leica and Belgian company CMOSIS, and then they actually manufactured it in France at a fab called ST Micro. And that was the last time Leica told us about the sensors that went in their cameras.
Right. Everyone always says, "Who makes the sensor?" Well, they told us then,
We don't know now.
and since then, who knows?
But the Max CMOS sensor, and I actually wrote an entire article on this about how advanced the S007 was at the time that people really didn't even see because of the sensor technology that they were using. The size of the electronic structures were actually much more advanced than similar sensors at the time from Sony and Canon and others. So Leica was really pushing the boundaries with the 007, which is how they were able to get that massive dynamic range. And the image quality combined with the incredible S lenses, which I think, to me, still, the S lenses are really that balance between the absolute, cutting edge precision of the SL and kind of that classic M magic,
Yes.
from the M lenses,
I think.
the hybrid.
How do I want to phrase this?
Carefully.
For your money, there is nothing better from a pure image quality standpoint than a 007. A pre-owned 007 with pre-owned S lenses, in my opinion. Obviously, we have SL2, SL2S, M11 with more resolution than this medium format camera.
More features and all that. Yeah.
And the SL lenses, the SL primes, are technically better than the S lenses. Like, I have no problem saying that because I've tested it. But what the S lenses give you, as David said, is a balance between the outright performance of the SL lenses and the 3D characteristics of M lenses. So a little bit faster focus fall off, a little softer in the corners, a little bit more vignetting, a little more something.
Je ne sais quoi.
Especially wide open. Top down, they're all amazing.
Well, take a look at,
if you take a look at it, Dave.
if you take a look at it.
Sorry, Jim.
Sorry, we had to do that. Okay, so in 2020, I did around when the S3 came out, I wanted to do a guide for S lenses because a lot of people really weren't familiar with the lineup. So again, this is under technical articles on red.forum, sorry. And if I go here, what I did, and I think we've shown this in a previous episode as well, recently. Yes, in the last episode.
Yeah.
But I wanted to show, again, kind of touch on this, where one of the reasons for the difference in look is because we have a negative crop factor, so 0.8x rather than a positive crop factor like you would on a smaller sensor camera. And that allows the lenses to have a more moderate focal length, but a wider field of view, like the 24, which has a field of view of an 18 or 19 millimeter, or the 45, which has a very normal 45, 50-ish lens perspective, but with a field of view at 35. And part of what we're looking at in terms of that magic, when I look at images that I've taken with the S, this is with the S-Type 007. And to talk about dynamic range just for a second here, we actually have a big print of this in the store that I show people. And everyone thinks that it's a sunset and daylight. This is not daylight. This is February in the middle of the night in Iceland in winter. And what you're seeing there is actually moonlight casting a shadow and giving that color in the sky. We went out that night to shoot Northern Lights, which should have been over here, but the cloud cover never broke. So instead, we just sort of, turned lemons into lemonade. And I actually am really happy with this image, Northern Lights or not. So when I was actually shooting this picture, I couldn't even see my feet. It was so dark. And it was cold, it was windy, it was miserable conditions. And I shot with the 24 millimeter lens, which is the widest in the S line, wide open at 3.5. So you talk about performance. This is critically sharp.
It's wide open.
Wide open.
That's sick. With the
Critically sharp everywhere. And I had to underexpose to protect the highlights. That arch and the whole foreground was pitch black, solid silhouette. Even though this is a long exposure, 32 seconds, wide open, I had to bring the shadows up 4 stops. And it looks normal. And that's one of the things that amazes me about the 007. And again, this is another, wide dynamic range shot. The thing that really impresses me about the 007 is it's just this single shot HDR that I have not experienced from any other camera, where I can shoot this, pull up the shadows to my heart content, and it never looks artificial. It always has this real quality to it, even when you're pushing the minus 100, highlights, plus 100 shadows, plus exposure compensation. It still looks normal.
I think that's, just to cut you off for a second, but on this topic, that's what one of the things that 007 brings to the table better than an SL2 is file malleability.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
The ability to just push and pull and play with those files in Lightroom is unprecedented, at least in my opinion. Obviously, the S3 is better than that, but we're talking about the 007 here. So
and look at the colors.
Yeah.
Like
amazing.
The color and the nuance that I have gotten off of this camera is out of this world.
Again, there's certainly things that the S007 and the S system in general is not great at. It's not that fast. It's center point focus only, but once you get around those limitations and understand them from an outright performance standpoint, not to mention, this is probably the most weather and dust sealed camera Leica's ever made. There's videos of us around the web, I think, still pouring water on this thing. The battery life is what, David? 1,500 shots?
1,500 to 2,000 shots, yeah.
Battery life is absurd. And operational usage, whatever, is very straightforward. It doesn't have a ton of features and gizmos and gadgets. The 007 was the first S camera with live view, which made using...
well, there you go. That's how weather sealed it is.
It made using graduated filters a lot easier. It made precise focusing much easier and all those other things. So it has Wi-Fi and all that stuff as well. So even though it came out in 2015, the same time as the SL601, it still, from a modernity standpoint, works very well. Again, it has GPS, of course. It's about using the S system and using medium format in general, whether it's medium format film or digital. It's about understanding the limitations and the trade-offs in terms of the slowness and the precision required, but what you gain from that, which is, as David's showing you, an unbelievable file quality, insanely high level of durability, usability, performance, not to mention the best optical viewfinder you've ever seen.
Biggest, brightest, most color neutral viewfinder I've ever used.
Yeah, if you've never looked through any S camera, whether it's an S2 or an S3 or everything in between, and you're only used to EVFs, you're in for a treat. It's insane.
Yeah.
Now,
all good things.
The S system, like most medium format, has seen significant depreciation over the years. We've talked about this before. So if you buy a new S lens, you're going to take a hit if you try to resell it. That's kind of the way the medium format market has always worked, at least as long as we've been in the business.
Absolutely.
Leica is not immune to that.
It's the way the film medium format market was.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. I guess it's just so niche. But the reality is, on the flip side, that means you can build out a kit for less than building out a new SL2 kit.
Wow.
Like a 3-lens 007 pre-owned kit is either the same price or less expensive slightly than a 3-lens new SL2 kit.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm not saying those are apples to apples. I'm just saying there's a lot of value there. And you're also buying things that are basically depreciated.
Right.
So again, cost of ownership is very low because if you ever get out of it, you can sell it. If you ever get out of the body, you can take the S lenses and put them on an SL601 or an SL2 with the S adapter L. Now, what's also cool about the 007, I'm just going to keep going.
Go for it.
It's something we never talk about anymore. S adapter V.
Oh,
S
yeah.
adapter C.
Oh, man. Yeah.
S adapter T67.
Yep.
If you have Hasselblad V system,
Yep.
Hasselblad H system, Pentax 67, Mamiya 645, or Contax 645 lenses, there are adapters to use them on the 007. So
right.
just like we talked about the SL being this incredible platform for all these lenses,
Forgot about that.
the S system has, and these are made by Leica, these adapters.
Yes, the
Leica
first party.
Now, they're hard to find now, new, but they're out there. Leica made an autofocus adapter for H lenses and an autofocus adapter for Contax lenses.
Yeah.
So you have autofocus and electronic aperture control from the 007 or an S3 body.
Yeah, these are not kludgy adapters.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to manually stop down.
Yeah.
Basically, all the regular dial controls on the camera, the autofocus
For the H and C adapters.
for the
yeah.
So for Hasselblad HC lenses and for the Contax 645 AF lenses. So I know a lot of people, that were using like the 80 millimeter f2, which is fantastic, the 100 f2.
Yeah, we're not saying that those lenses are a replacement for Leica lenses, but you
They're still
have
really nice.
the whole point is you have this amazing body. You can get one or two or no Leica lenses. Maybe you have a bunch of H lenses. I don't know. And you have
I know also people
Yes.
were using the 300-45.
yes,
Because
the
Leica,
HC.
Leica caps out at 180 as the longest lens,
Yeah.
but the easy way around that is to pick up the Hasselblad HC
Or the Contax 350. That's a beast.
or the Contax 350
Yeah.
SI.
So it's actually a really, really cool platform with native adapter support. So like you don't have to go and get third-party adapters.
Yeah.
These are Leica-made adapters, which is super, super cool. So I don't know. I think S system still. S is probably the most underrated. I feel like I'm always saying this, but
Everything's the most underrated.
No, M11 and M10R and those are not underrated. Those are overrated. Well, I guess properly rated.
Properly rated.
Whereas 007, it's slept on, I think, at least these days. And the lenses and the adapters and the availability of tons of accessories and the battery life and the durability is.
And I would say that no camera in the lineup has saw more continued use in my personal photography than the S007.
I used to shoot car shows with the 007. With the 007 and the 30-90 zoom lens, I would go out all day and shoot that thing with a 95 millimeter polarizer and a ginormous compact flash card, and I was good. Those are the good old days.
The good old days. Yeah. Wow. I could shoot an entire day of landscape photography with one extra battery.
Yeah. The good old days. Now you go out with a SL2 and you bring 10 batteries. Like four. Wow. Excuse me. Any questions? We have just been mostly.
I'm not even looking at the chat.
I've
right
just
now.
been like on a sprint. Jose, fire away.
When you're using Leica's Hasselblad H adapter on the 007, can you use their CS, central shutter?
Yes.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool. Because the Hasselblad H system only has a lens shutter that goes to 800th of a second. The S, if you're unfamiliar with it, has a dual shutter system. You can show the overhead camera there, or you may
Scraping the lens across the. It's too
you
big.
might take the lens off.
Just take our word for it. It's okay.
It has a selector switch on the back for FPS, for focal plane shutter, and CS for central shutter. And on a central shutter, is this a central shutter? No. On a central shutter lens, they look identical. They just say CS on the top. You can either use the focal plane shutter up to 1/4000th of a second if you want to shoot wide open, or you can use the central shutter, which syncs at 1,000th of a second for using studio strobe for flash. On the Hasselblad, it only goes to 800th of a second on the HC lenses, and there is no mechanical focal plane shutter. So in order to shoot wide open, you have to use ND filters for Hasselblad. Leica got around that, or certainly, let's say, if you want to use those lenses on the S, you can either use the focal plane shutter up to 8,000 or 4,000, sorry, or you can use the leaf shutter in the Hasselblad lenses up to 800th, which is pretty neat. So they're actually, because you're getting autofocus, auto aperture, and you're getting focal plane and leaf shutter capability, the H lenses actually are more capable on an S camera than they are on an H camera, which is pretty neat.
Are you gonna ask us Robert's question, Jose?
Yeah. Is the original S007 still serviced by Leica?
Yes. So my rule is every single S-type 007 that I receive on a trade or buy for the store actually gets sent to Germany for a full overhaul before it is resold. There's a few reasons for that. It's not, relative to the cost of the camera, it is expensive to service because the camera's parts are still expensive to replace. This is relatively speaking. For example, a CLA on an M10R, which is an $8,000 camera, could be $400. So it's a small percentage of its price. A CLA on a 007, which is $5,000, $6,000, could be $1,000. because of the cost of the parts. They're not always that way. I'm saying it could be. So we prefer to make sure that the person buying it is not burdened with any cost. It's not often we have to spend that much. Usually it's like $400 to $500. Leica will just go through it, test everything, the shutter. The other thing is a lot of the 007s that we get haven't been used very much. It happens. It's okay. And we like to make sure that they get checked out top to bottom before they go to a new home. So yes, Leica can still service them. Any 007 that you get from us at the very least is going to have a trip to the factory in Wetzlar with a full overhaul and generally a 1-year warranty. They're overall pretty reliable. I will say that sometimes we see people who don't put their compact flash cards in right and they bend the pins. That is an expensive fix, so I just recommend using SD cards.
Yes, only,
which is what we both do. But yes, to answer the question, yes, they can still be serviced without an issue.
Yeah.
We have a couple of more quick questions on the S.
Sure, go.
You guys gonna mention this, but how would you compare the S007 to the current SL2?
I think we covered that.
I mean,
Yeah.
dynamic range is a stop and a half better.
More dynamic range, more unique look from the lenses. And
Although you can use those lenses on...
more file malleability, and it just looks nice. I'm not saying it looks better, because better is subjective, but it looks
the
like a medium format.
look.
It's
has
very
that,
pretty look.
Yeah.
It has, even stop down, it has more depth. And that's because of, read the article, it's because of effective focal length and effective f-stop for medium format.
And then the other one is somebody's asking about the 100 millimeter Summicron.
Yeah.
How does it resolve on the S3, which is
It's great.
kind of looks like an Octalux in a way.
Yeah,
It's
that the S lenses are designed for way beyond what the S3
They
is.
were, this takes me back, but I went over to Germany for I was a beta tester for the S2 back in summer of 2009, I think, 2009. And we ran through the engineers and the R&D, and we got to sit down with Peter Karba, and he was telling us all about the S lenses, and they were basically designed to resolve somewhere around 100 megapixel on that 30 by 45 millimeter sensor area. So 64 megapixels on the S3 isn't even maxing them out. They've got room to motor after that.
Yeah.
Last thing, we just have one comment that I'll just mention. For studio portraiture, I found the S system has given me the best distance to the model and light relationship, so I won't block out any light in a full body shoot.
Yeah, I guess the negative crop factor will do that.
Exactly.
That's cool.
So
Nice.
And the funny thing is, Leica from the outset kind of positioned the S camera as a professional studio fashion portrait camera.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was one of the only people at the time was like, well, this is an amazing landscape camera. They're like, no, this is a studio camera. It's like, well, why did you make it weather and dust sealed? Like,
Yeah.
and they said, well, to put up with the rigors of professional studio work. I was like, no.
Why does it have military grade Limo connectors for
We are taking this to Iceland, and I'm standing under waterfalls.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay.
Yeah.
So I think they didn't really even see the full potential of what this camera has become. It's still great in studio, but it's fantastic in the field. It's just a wonderful camera. And I remember another story at that same junket when they were talking about how they tested the weather sealing of the lenses. And maybe they have more advanced equipment now in the new factory in Wetzlar, but this was back in the Solms days. And their very advanced machine for testing weather sealing was, you remember this?
You could say it.
Okay. Was a dishwasher.
Yes.
They just bought a commercial dishwasher, and they put the lenses, rear lens cap on, and stuck the lenses like on the top shelf of a dishwasher where your glasses would go, and they ran it under full cycle.
There you go.
And
I don't recommend doing that with your Leica equipment.
but
don't do this at home.
but to say
Don't try this at home.
but to say they really put it through the full cycle, they put it through the full cycle. These and that's why Josh said the S and the S lenses are probably the toughest stuff they've ever built in from any cameras.
Yeah.
Including the SL.
Even more so than the SL, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy weather sealed.
So now that it's 9 o'clock, I feel like we should address
We'd have to make an announcement.
Scotland.
Yeah.
Let's do that first. Scotland. So we have one, maybe two spots,
two
two
spots.
spots left for our Scotland workshop, which is in the fall.
Yes, with me and Kirsten.
with David and Kirsten, which times really well if you also want to go to the LHSA meeting in Dublin.
Which we will do.
Which
because
David will
they
also
are
be at.
immediately one after the other.
Pull it up on the website, David, so we can I see you got it right there on the left. No, you have it already. Second to right tab. Bingo. May have to refresh it, but 1 second.
Do.
Super prepared. Super prepared here.
Do. Okay.
Scroll down. There it is. That says one spot left.
Oh, okay.
All right, you got to fight over it. It is October 2nd
And
through
go.
the 10th. So if you want to hang out with David in Scotland, now's your chance.
Yes, yes. And it's just awesome and beautiful. That's with the SL2 though, but we're not talking about that now. Yeah, just a fantastic scenery, Old Man of Store,
Wow.
and Scottish Highlands, Isle of Skye, mind-blowing landscape photography, and the food and drink are not half bad either. That was it's a lot of fun, and we've got a small group. There's just going to be 12 of us, and we always are giving props to Kirsten. She's an awesome photo guide, photographer, and you get me also. So
Also.
We're gonna do a live stream from Iceland one day.
Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah. Okay.
if you're interested,
Yes.
sign up before it's gone, because pretty much this is the only 2022 workshop with space available. Every other workshop is full and sold out. This one only because we had a somewhat last minute cancellation, and we're just giving you guys first dibs on this.
That's right.
What do you have next?
Well, I think because it's the peak of the show,
Yeah.
we should talk about the thing that everybody wants to know, which is the question everybody's asking
What? I didn't even.
about this.
Oh, yeah. You want to address the
That
So-
little guy.
APSC elephant in the room?
Here's the thing.
I'll give it to you.
Thank you. David and I do not work for Leica. David and I cannot speak on behalf of Leica. We cannot make statements that apply to anything that Leica says or does unless we are reiterating or repeating something that they said. So the question is
Because lawyers.
yeah. So again, we can only speak from our opinion and our experience
Yeah.
and common sense and what we see in the market. We cannot speak for Leica. We cannot make definitive statements. We cannot say this is how it is unless it's something that Leica themselves is saying and that we're repeating. I just want to make that clear. So people want to know what's going on with the APS-C system. So TL2, CL, and then the line of zooms and primes that they have in the L-mount APS-C or the TL mount. Because if you've noticed, they're hard to find now, brand new. Most places, including us, don't have stock of any CLs, maybe have a few TL2s, and lenses are becoming harder and harder to find new. And there's all kinds of speculation about Leica's discontinuing it, they're going to replace it, they're not going to replace it, the system is dead. Now, they have not made an official statement saying one thing or the other. I don't know if they ever will, because they're Leica and they work in mysterious ways, and this is just another example.
Sometimes they just choose to not communicate. So
as common sense, based on what we see now, is telling me that, yeah, they're not making this stuff anymore. We have not been able to restock a lot of the cameras and lenses, at least from Leica USA. So it is logical based on that, and the fact that it seems like that's what the chatter is going, is that the APS-C system as a whole is discontinued. They're not making it anymore. Again, this is just what we're seeing.
Yep.
Leica has not made this an official statement. Now, what does that mean in the grand scheme of things? Does it make the CL any worse than it already is?
Well, here's the question that I keep seeing,
Yes.
and I'm not even looking at the chat right now, but here's the question I keep seeing.
Yes.
Oh, well, so Leica's not making anymore. Should I dump the system? It's like, well, are you getting good pictures and do you enjoy using it? Because I sure do. I'm taking a trip next week to go hiking in Maine, and you know what camera I'm going to take? Give you one hint.
CL?
The CL.
Because
with an 18 and a 35.
There's nothing that's interchangeable lens, autofocus, and small that Leica makes other than the CL. You've got a great ecosystem of L-mount lenses and accessories. It takes the same battery as the original Q, which we just talked about, meaning it's very easy to find. Now, for me, one concern that I would have is if Leica couldn't service the CL anymore, but they are absolutely committed to still servicing it.
Yes.
I've spoken with customer care. They are servicing the CL and the lenses. So if you have a CL, you buy one used, buy one new, you can still get it serviced. They generally 5 to 10 years is what they usually do for products like that.
By European union law.
I think it's 5 years or 6 years.
6 years
I
minimum.
think. Yeah.
6 years minimum.
So I would say we have at least.
And that's 6 years minimum after an official date of discontinuation, which hasn't happened yet.
So I think 5 to 6 years at least of comfortable ability to get it serviced, no problem, replacement parts.
I'm not worried. And they've been really reliable.
Yeah, it's pretty rare actually to send a CL in for service. But if you drop it or something, have an accident. So is the APSC system discontinued? Leica has not stated as such. Does it seem like that's the case? Yes. Does that make the equipment any worse? Does it mean you should dump your system? No. If it's giving you good photographs and it's working well for you, don't get rid of it. In fact, we're trying to buy up more APS-C lenses because we like using them. We have a 55 to 135
Yeah, I mean, look
on
at
our
the
overhead camera right here.
Look at the quality of, I don't know, show something.
The top-down camera?
Yeah, so we have this.
They've been seeing it. But Jose, show them.
Move your phone out of the way.
Let me get the top-down camera. There we go.
Yeah, show something pretty. There we go.
So look, like this is a 55 to 135. Now, one of the cool things about the APS-C lenses is how well they work on the SL2 and the SL2S for both stills and video. Okay, Jose, you can go back. So there's no question in my mind about the performance of the lenses and of the camera. Is it unfortunate? Does it make us sad that Leica appears to be phasing out of the system? Yes. Have they indicated as to why this may be? No. Why do I think they're doing it? Because the reality is full frame is what most people want. Full frame is where you have the most opportunity for the highest level of performance, the biggest market, the most amount of innovation. M lenses work really well. It's hard to use an M lens on the CL with the crop factor, so I get it. If Leica is saying, if again, speculating.
Well, they're not saying
If
anything.
Leica is going to say, we're not going to make APS-C anymore because we want to put more money in things like the M11 and future full-frame products, I'm all about it. I don't know what the future holds. Again, Leica has not made an official statement. This is not us saying. Leica is saying. This is David and I, well, me rambling.
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, saying.
I'm just sitting here silently agreeing with you.
Well, I just want to, put it out there because a lot of people want to know and a lot of people are asking. The main sign of this is just the fact that we have not been able to restock on this stuff new. So that generally tells me but that doesn't mean that Leica is saying to everyone with a CL, you're done. If it breaks, you're out of luck. Have a nice day. No, they can still fix it. You can still go on Leica's website and request a manual for the CL.
When was the last firmware update for this?
It was this year, or last year.
Yeah, so they're still actively supporting the system as they were. It's just shipping new ones. We haven't seen them.
The 60 macro.
Wow.
I'm going to be, that's the lens I use almost every day. I'm going to be very sad if we can't get them anymore.
The 35-1.4 TL.
Yeah.
Almost every single product shot that you see on our website or in our emails, a lot of stuff on Red Dot Forum, all the product photography that Kirsten shoots, she uses the 35-1.4.
Social media, website.
Yeah. There is a precedent for this, which is the R system. Right? They made that for years and they discontinued it after the R9. But has that made the R lenses any less fun and interesting in 2022? No.
Not at all.
In fact, the market for R lenses has gone up.
Astronomically.
Dramatically. As supply has dwindled as people are snapping them up. So whether or not Leica continues to make the CL, the TL2, and the lenses has nothing to do with the actual products, how they work, and where they fit into a particular kit. So that would be I think we share the same opinion, our opinion on where we're at right now. If Leica makes an official statement, we will talk about it.
Yes.
Right? We won't keep it a secret if Leica says this is what we're doing. As of now, they have not. I don't know what else to say. I feel like if there's something I missed, please ask in the chat. But I just wanted to kind of put that out there.
And I mean, look, I'll share my personal opinion.
Yes.
First of all, again, I'm dead serious. I am packing a CL for my trip because it fits that need perfectly. My wife may also take a Q with her. Maybe, maybe not, but they're different cameras. A Q and a CL are not the same thing. Can they do similar duty? Sure. Are they the same thing? No, because one is interchangeable lens and one is not. And the CL, frankly, is smaller than the Q, especially when you put the 18 on it. Is it as high performing as the Q? No. Is it close? Usually.
Kind of.
Yeah.
So pretty good, actually.
There's trade-offs. I'm not saying the CL is the end-all be-all perfect camera, but it works really well when you want to have something light with interchangeable lenses and, really just keep things simple. Do I wish that they would come out with an updated CL2 like everybody else keeps asking us in chat? Absolutely. And if Leica's listening, yes,
Okay.
there is a market for a CL2, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
But it's not up to me. It's not up to Josh.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the decision makers are the ones who have to make that call. And maybe we don't see that now. Maybe after supply chain shortages and all this stuff
I wouldn't
settles down.
make decisions based on what Leica may or may not do.
Yeah.
Just to cut in
Yeah,
for a moment,
sure.
like I would just make decisions based on your needs, your budget, your kit, what you like.
And
That's
if
why
you-
David
and
likes a CL.
And, I'm actively trying to find some other CL lenses. Just to, I'm sorry. I'm not looking for anything. And, I'm certainly not going to get rid of my personal CL because I like it too much. So I guess we covered it.
Yeah. So if anyone
Don't
has
know what else
additional
to say.
questions, I would certainly you can ask. But that's really all we know. Again, if Leica puts something out official, we'll share it. We'll share it here. We'll share it on the Red Dot forum. But for now, we're just basing our observations and trying to draw some speculative conclusions based on our own opinion. Again, this is not speaking on behalf of Leica. This is not a definitive statement. This is how it is. This is just what we are experiencing in our own little bubble.
Yes.
Okay. I think that is enough of that. Let's get on
Are we ready to move on to the...
to the pièce de résistance, which is, well, the M system. What else is Leica other than M? M is everything.
A lot of things?
I guess that's true. Yeah, I guess they make a phone and they make a fountain pen.
I like the keychain myself. That's my favorite.
Yeah, the Leica keychain. The .95
And man,
keychain.
those lens cloths are amazing.
Super nice. So now we have the M11. That's the cat's meow, right? We did 2 shows on it. David has an amazing review on Red Dot Forum. It's 5+ years in the making. But we have something that's extremely, extremely competent, very mature, very stable, and very available in the M10R. This is a camera that David has shot with more than me. Tell me, why does the M10R make sense when there's an M11? No pressure.
No pressure. Okay. So the M10, just to kind of like talk about all of the M10s. The M10, again, is a fully modern M platform. The M10 and the M11 share the same body.
Not exactly
well,
the same
the
body.
base plate's different,
Yeah.
but
They're pretty close.
pretty close. In terms of dimension, they are almost identical. The optical viewfinder system is identical between the M10 and the M11 because they redesigned it from the ground up for the M10. The M10 is 4 millimeters thinner than the M240, which is thinner than the M9. They were able to, well, actually the M9 was slightly thinner, but anyway, the M10 was the first digital M Leica to match the dimensions of an analog M. So when you have, let me pick one up, but it doesn't have a case on it.
There you go. Right next to it.
Okay, I'm right next to it. So when I have an M10 here, if you don't look too closely, especially at that, if I cover that up, well,
That's an M10P.
that's an M10P. All
Close
right,
enough.
give me those.
It's the same dimensions.
I know, but this one has a red dot.
Okay.
Okay, so if I cover this up here, you wouldn't know at first glance if this is an M11 or an M10 because they look the same, barring, this is the giveaway, and we always look here because Leica moved this to the top. But other than that, at first glance, really hard pressed to tell the difference because they do share the same overall body dimension. They share the same unified 3-button interface with the touchscreen interface.
But how far I move this lens, you keep knocking into it.
Sorry. And it is, and when I reviewed the M10 back in beginning of 2017, I called it the quintessential digital M because it really is. It really was and still is, I guess, that pure M experience. It's unadulterated. It's as close to an analog experience as you can get. And what we've seen with the M11 is largely technology upgrades in terms of the sensor design, in terms of the VisiFlex, and getting rid of the base plate, which some people don't like. Mm-hmm. So there, number one rule, number one reason, right?
There you go. Oh, that's the number one reason?
Number one reason. So if you don't like that Leica got rid of the base plate
Oh, jeez.
on the M11, get an M10R.
That's not the number one reason, but that is a reason.
That is a reason. But basically, it is a fully modern and mature system because this is now so we had the M8, the 8.2, the 240,
What about the M9?
the M8, the M8.2, the M9, the
M9P.
240, M9P.
You're going crazy now.
I mean, it's really, depending on your definition, it could be the 4th or the 6th digital M version.
Watch our 15 years of digital M.
Oh my
episode.
gosh. Right. So it's very, very mature.
Yes.
This is not Leica's first go around with this.
Yes.
And it's a Maestro 2 processor, which is the same that's in the SL601. It's very fast, it's very responsive, and it's a great camera.
I have dog fur on me now. I think what's really telling
Is that it?
that's dog fur. No, it's what Leica didn't change on the M11.
Oh,
The viewfinder,
yeah,
exactly the same.
yeah,
ISO dial,
yep.
the general menu and button
Here,
layout.
You have the overhead there.
With a couple of things. Well, I'm just saying. So the core rangefinder experience, or range-finding experience between the M10 generation cameras and the M11
the same.
hasn't changed in terms of the viewfinder and the shutter button and the ISO dial. That stuff is exactly the same. You've got some custom function buttons and you've got some blah, blah, blah. M11 is insanely good.
Yes.
We love it, obviously. But the actual range-finding experience between the M10 generation and the M11 is exactly the same,
Same.
which is very telling. It tells you how good that M10 rangefinder was.
Yeah, and if you remember, if you have read, Josh remembers, but if any of you have read my M11 review, I basically start out, my whole premise of the M11 review is that Leica had a really serious problem after the introduction of the M10R because they didn't know how to make it better. Like they really, really struggled for years.
Yeah.
How can we markedly improve what we've done with the M10R? Already they were, pushing 40 megapixel with a brand new color filter array design. It has incredible high ISO performance. It has incredible highlight recovery,
Yes.
shadow recovery, color fidelity, and the most, at that time, dynamic range of any M camera. Only to be usurped by the M11, which is saying something because that's 15 stops of dynamic range,
Yeah.
which just started to scratch where the S is living at. But the M10R is like 14 and a half stops of dynamic range.
Pretty good.
It's really, really good. And its ISO capability is such that you're getting really clean files up to 12,500 ISO.
Yeah.
And another thing that I said in my M11 review is what was so impressive about the M11, where they went to 60 megapixels, is that they were able to equal the ISO performance of the M10R
Yeah.
while going to more pixels.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that it put the M10R to shame.
Yeah.
It just was able to keep up with it.
With higher pixel density.
With higher
on
pixel
the
density.
sensor, yeah. The M10R, one of the other advantages, at least right now, the M10R represents 5 years of development, polishing, maturing, and firmware being the final iteration of the M10 platform, the ultimate iteration, whereas the M11 is just in its infancy. There have been a few firmware updates already. It has another 5 years to go, 4.5 years to go, whatever. So if you want a camera that is as stable and as smooth and as mature as you can possibly get while still being extremely modern, while still offering very, very close to the same level of image quality as an M11, and that's more readily available, and it has a base plate, and you can get it in black chrome, blah, blah, blah. M10R is a great option. Don't forget also, over the course of the M10 life cycle, you had the M10, then you had the M10P, which introduced the quieter shutter, the touchscreen, and the virtual horizon, and we get all those features in the M10R as well.
Correct.
So again, it has all the refinements, improvements, and polish that you got through those 5 years of development.
Yeah, and we could talk about the M10P for a second, but a lot of the M10R refinements started in the M10P,
Yes.
which is these two here.
Yes.
And we covered this in our 15 years of digital M as well.
Yeah.
But that ultra quiet shutter, I think, is the biggest significant upgrade in the M10P versus the original M10. I still think that the original M10, and oddly, we don't have one on the table here.
I'm right here.
Oddly, we have one on the table right here.
What you talking about? That's for sale. Don't drop it.
Okay, so an original M10 still represents a great value, and everyone says, "Oh, well, what's the difference in image quality between an M10 and an M10P?" There's a large price difference. There is no difference in image quality. It's the same exact sensor in an M10 versus an M10P. The only thing that you're missing out on is 3 things, which is a touchscreen. This is not a touchscreen; it's just a screen. You're missing out on the ultra quiet shutter, which is near silent when you have a lens on there. but it's still very quiet on the M10. And some people, it's funny, actually prefer the
Little
acoustics.
mechanical sounding, yeah.
The acoustics here, because when that first came out, when the M10P first came out, there was that concern where someone was trying to take a picture of a person, and they just stand there like,
'Cause they didn't
smiling.
get
They didn't
the
realize they had
shutter,
taken
yeah.
a picture. So acoustics are a little different. And then the third item is the built-in level gauge. So you can't do perspective control on the M10 that you can do on the M10P and the M10R. But for a lot of people, that's not a huge deal.
For under $5,000, it's hard to beat the M10 because you have
And we got that nice close-up.
all of the refinements that have come through firmware, a rangefinder that was dramatically improved from its predecessor and is still used in the current model, the M11, same body as the M10R, readily available. They're not hard to get. And most significantly, in terms of recent, is now compatibility with the VisoFlex 2,
That's true.
which is fantastic. We talked about that on the last show. So if you're looking for a very, very refined digital rangefinder experience, you don't want to spend the $9,000 to get an M11. You don't want to have to wait if they're not in stock. M10 for half the price, basically. Yeah, half the price.
It's not half the camera.
Definitely not half the camera. It represents an amazing value, and you could spend the rest on lenses. Because remember, the lenses are going to work on every M forever.
And again, we're looking at a depreciated product that's mature. So a mature, depreciated product that has a stable market value. You could theoretically, let's say, go in, if you're just getting started in M, you build up a collection of lenses, you get an M10 of some iteration,
Yeah.
and use it for a year. Very likely, it's not going to be worth significantly less a year later if you take good care of it.
And they're easy to get serviced, by the way, and not that expensive to have a CLA done on an M10. It's a few $100s.
But at that point, if you find that you want to move into an M11,
Yeah.
you can do so. You've had the opportunity to use an amazing camera with the M10 for a year, and the actual cost of ownership over that year is next to nothing, which is awesome.
Awesome. One of the beauties of getting a nice, depreciated, but still relevant Leica product, which is you can use it. I'm not going to say you can use it for free, but you can use it for very little. And if you decide to upgrade or switch out or whatever, you can do that pretty easily.
Low risk.
In terms of firmware, we haven't seen as many dramatic updates in the M10 lineup as we've seen in the SL system, with the one big exception for the P, R, and Monochrome being the Leica perspective control,
Yeah.
which David has a whole article on Red Dot Forum. Can you pull that up real quick? So again, this was a feature we got later. This wasn't something that was just built.
This was
into the
just
camera.
like, here you go.
We also got, I have it all printed out somewhere. Hold on. Here we go. And we got some Wi-Fi improvements and additional favorites menu things. And we got, a low speed burst mode in firmware,
So
faster
this was
shooting.
the perspective control.
Yeah.
And you can turn it on there and see what it actually does. So in practice, that's my lovely hands there,
There you go.
shooting City Hall across the street from us. But you can see on the screen that it detects tilt and roll and yaw, and then applies in metadata, both the on-screen playback will be corrected, and the metadata will be transferred in a raw file to Lightroom to automatically apply the same perspective control. So if you have something that's off skew like this, it straightens it out.
Nice.
Straight like that.
And again, this came in firmware. Now, you don't get this on the M10 because it doesn't have the Virtual Horizon gyroscopic hardware inside, so it can't do it. So if you want this feature, you need to get an M10P, an M10R, or an M10 Monochrom. Just FYI. Before we get to talk about something even older, but still fantastic, is the M Monochrome Type 246. Now, this, of course, is based on the 240 platform, which is not one generation old. That's 2 generations old. But because there is no M11 Monochrome yet, until tomorrow, no, I'm kidding. We have like 3 years to go. The 246 Monochrome
You're
does
get in so much trouble here.
Gosh. The 246 Monochrome is the one step back previous generation for the Monochrome system. David has there's a few things in our Red Dot Forum that are really, really relevant to this.
Sure.
Number one is David's review, which is from 2015. And you can see.
I just want to point this out.
2015 was a good year.
2015 was an insane year for Leica.
Q116, SL601, S007, and 246 Monochrome.
Wow. I'm going to just say, this has to be Leica's most significant year on record, where they just completely knocked it out the park.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were just like hitting their stride on every single camera introduction.
Now-
Amazing. It really gave us a lot of work.
Go to the screen before we get sidetracked. This is David's Monochrom review. You can see. Awesome. Tons of great sample images that
And I explain what Monochrom
talking
is.
about the sensor, comparing it against the other models. Very, very in depth.
Blah, 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 blah.
But in my opinion, what's more relevant than this on Red Dot Forum are the black and white showdowns. Because to me,
I'll do that.
what makes the 246 Monochrom particularly relevant still in 2022 is how good its high ISO performance is, even though the camera is technically 2 generations old. Here, we're comparing which ones, David?
This one, we're comparing the M10 against the SL2 and the 246.
Perfect. So here you can see that, or how the Monochrom 246 stacks up against its replacement, as well as the M10. And I think,
Well, M10 Monochrom and the M10P.
yeah,
So let's
converted to black and white for
Right.
the M10P.
So
yeah.
let's
Go to the high stuff.
let me just show something like at maybe 8,000,
Yeah.
6,400. There, 8,000 is good.
So here,
M246
246
in the
is
middle.
better, isn't it, than the M10P?
It's a little better, yeah.
Yeah, or very close. So here we have the previous generation equaling or slightly exceeding its successor in color, the M10P. Now, this
I
is
can
ISO
go,
8.
I can go, yeah, I can go
I was
higher.
gonna go higher. Thank you. Lost train of thought there. There we go. Higher. Yes. 12.5.
They're all very good.
Yeah. Yeah. I still think the Monochrom is a little better. So
It is.
if you want all the benefits of a monochrome only camera, meaning higher apparent resolution because there's no color filter interpolation, higher or better high ISO performance, the ability to use color filters to get
Try this one. Here's
Same effect.
25,000.
nice.
There we go.
Yeah, now the monochrome is really kind of coming into its own. I mean,
Yeah.
look at the details on the label there, like around the circle part. Yeah, it's significant. Better high ISO performance than an M10. The 246 monochrome is a great option. They're not that hard to find. The accessories are relatively inexpensive. It still has live view. You can get an EVF2 or the Olympus VF2 variant, which looks exactly the same. So you have focus peaking and magnification, all that stuff that you get with any live view camera, with an extraordinarily, in fact, I would say a disproportionately high level of performance that you and I probably took for granted in 2015.
Well, I mean, no, I thought it was game changing in terms of ISO performance.
Maybe. Okay, maybe I just took it for granted. But I
To read my review, yeah.
I did when it came out. But I think, now what's interesting is the supply of pre-owned 246s has been quite quiet
Yes, it has.
as of late. And I'm wondering why that is. I don't actually know.
People are holding on to them.
It's very unusual for me to get something on one of them on trade-in. I have maybe one pending right now. So I don't know what that means. It's very interesting. But anyway, rambling here.
That's okay.
If you read David's Monochrom 246 review, if you look at the black and white showdown articles, and you can clearly see how forward in terms of performance the
Amazing.
Monochrom 246 actually is.
For sure.
And because it's based on the 240 and the MP240 and all that, you have tons of accessories available, grips and thumbs ups and batteries and viewfinders and diopters and all this stuff that's very, very inexpensive relative to what it costs new to outfit a full monochrome kit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think a 246 could be a great companion to even an M10R. As long as you didn't mind the 2 batteries, having to spend $9,000 on an M10 monochrome, which admittedly is incredible,
Yeah.
or $4,000 or less on a 246, that can give you still mind-blowingly good high ISO performance.
Really good, yeah.
Since we're on the 240 subject,
Yeah.
I want to cheat our topic a little bit to talk about something that I think is like 1.5 steps back,
Oh,
but it's a
okay.
camera that I really, really like, that we got a question about from our good friend Terry. See, now I told you, Terry, you have to ask us a question. I wouldn't leave you alone until you did, and you did ask us a question. So now I'm going to call you out and thank you, and also answer your question after Jose poses it to us.
All right. Here's the question. I have always preferred the Leica M, the digital Leica M's with the most minimal features. The latest one I have is the 262. Please give your thoughts on this camera in today's world of cameras with many, many features. Pros and cons of the M262.
Oh, I would love to. The M262 It's got, and I talked about this before, it has to be one of the most forgotten, probably the most forgotten variation of any digital M, at least any modern one. It is based on the 240. So it's the same sensor and the same internals as an M Type 240. So that's, to get that. Some people have said, oh, the sensor, no, it's the same sensor. Like it didn't make a special sensor for the 262. Now the 240 sensor, 24 megapixels, great performance up to ISO 3200-ish. Very, very good. Great color. David loved it when it came out. The 262 is also one of the most anticipatory cameras in terms of feature sets.
Anticipated?
No, because of the features it had that came later.
That's not a word then.
You're not a word. I just made it up. People like to call me out when I use words wrong or like make up words, but you know what? This is our show. We can do whatever we want. Anyway,
I would
while
say
I'm talking, you're going to pull up the launch article on Red Dot Forum for that.
it was a forward-thinking.
Yes.
It was forward-thinking features that
Yes.
would ultimately find their way into future models.
Thank you. The two that come to mind right away. Number one, this was the introduction for a digital M of an aluminum top plate, which saved 100 grams and made the 262 considerably lighter. We didn't see this again until this year when the M11 came out in black, which has an aluminum top plate. You just go search 262. That's the first one. The second one was a significantly quieter shutter, which we didn't see again until the M10P came out years later. So here's a camera that was so forward-thinking, it had two significant features, like it didn't use again until years later.
Got it.
It also eliminated live view, meaning you have no M button, no video, no M button on the top of the camera, no live view button, no port for the EVF. This made the menu only 2 pages long. It made the camera super sealed in terms of there was no speaker or microphone ports. There was no EVF port, no video button on the top. It was the simplest. There's no frame line preview lever. There's no focus assist button on the front.
Look on the front.
This is the cleanest,
Boom.
simplest digital M that Leica has, as far as I'm concerned, has ever made, excluding
So
the
just
M10D.
to point that out.
Yes.
So no frame line.
Well, I have one right here.
Oh, no. Show that. Just show that.
I can show the real one. I don't have to show the fake one.
There we go.
Okay, my favorite part. Now, you know I'm a giant nerd. This is a 262 that we have for sale. This one happens to be certified pre-owned. It's never had a strap on it. I don't think. It's perfect. Anyway, here's the back. Now, compared to a 240, and 246 is here, instead of the
HDMI port.
live view button, we have a white balance button. Otherwise, all the buttons are the same. You can see there's no speaker. Hold on. So on the 246 and the 240 cameras, we had a speaker here for video playback. We have the movie button here. On the 262, there is no movie button on the top plate, and there is no speaker here. So and there's no microphone here. No microphone. So all of the ports and holes and stuff are all gone. Super simple design, dedicated white balance button, which is cool. And you can't, well, I'm holding it, but it's considerably noticeably lighter than the 240 because the top plate is aluminum. And of course the quieter shutter, which are noise canceling, well, is here. But the best part of the 262 is now on the 240 platform, you had the port here for the EVF2. So when you slid in the electronic viewfinder, the contacts would slide in like that. Now, because the 262 does not have live view, it doesn't need a port for the EVF. So on the 240 platform, the hot shoe cover was designed like an L. So when it slid on the camera, it covered the EVF port to keep it clean. Because the 262 doesn't have an EVF port, and it's the only 240 generation camera that doesn't, aside from the MD 262, which is totally different, Leica actually made a hot shoe cover specific only for the M262. This hot shoe cover, which I'll hold against that, there we go. This is so nerdy. This is the only camera that uses this hot shoe cover. They made this camera for like a year, and yet they took the time to have its own dedicated, super specific hot shoe cover made. So if you own an M262 and you don't have the hot shoe cover, get a replacement while they're still available because it is one of a kind. So I think the 262, even though it is technically 2 generations old, in terms of simplicity, lightweight, quiet shutter, and just cool factor for being such
very unique.
Little, I think I did the math and we actually sold them for less than 1 year.
Wow.
In terms of when they wwere available. The 262 is one of the coolest. Even if you have a newer M, this is really, really cool.
Neat.
Yes. Sorry. I didn't mean to tangent like that, but like the 262 is awesome. And Terry, you have one, and so you know this. You You're
I mean, the only thing that's equivalent in the M10 lineup that's kind of pseudo the same thing would be like the M10D, but I'm not allowed to talk about the M10D because reasons.
yes, the M10D is awesome, but they're
But also
so
very,
hard,
very
they're
limited,
so hard
yeah.
to find that we try not to upset people.
We don't want to do that. Don't want to do that.
But anyway, so that is the M-Type 262, which is just a cool little.
It is cool.
I think Josh likes the 262.
I genuinely do. I've always liked it. Liked it when it came out.
Listen, he only likes it because of the hot shoe cover.
Yep, I think so
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
That is true. But, it's something cool about the feel of the lightweight and the simplicity of the nothing on the front, nothing on the top plate, no holes, no speaker, no microphone. I don't know. If you just want to get out and shoot and you want a 2-page menu, literally that's just 2 pages. That's it. 262 is the only way you're going to get it.
That's cool.
If you can find one.
Yeah.
So,
Very
anyway.
cool.
Questions. Please shut me up.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so you just talked about this. Are the specs for the 240 and 262 the same, factoring out video capabilities?
Yeah, same
We
sensor.
went over that.
Mhm.
We had a question about, let me see. How does the 240 differ from the M10?
Read the M10 launch article. There's
Lot,
way too
a
much
lot.
to cover on this show.
Stuff.
Or watch 15 Years of Digital M, 2-part show
I like it.
for a real explanation into that.
Yeah,
'Cause
and we
covered
talked-
the whole-
Differences, yeah.
Right. The whole process, because
Yes.
there was a very, very significant shift in technology and design from the 240 generation to the M10. Much, much more significant than the M10 to the M11.
Yep.
Because the M10 and the M11 are much closer than the 240 and the M10. And in fact, another really good resource.
What you got?
I did an interview with this here. If you pop over the screen. So at the M10 launch, where, back in 2017, I had the pleasure of speaking with Stefan Daniel and Jesko van Onhausen, they've actually moved up in the world. So Stefan is now the executive vice president of product management or something, and Jesko is director of product design or something like that. So these basically are the two guys who are at the top of the food chain when it comes to products and product development, product management at Leica. At the time, basically, Jesko was the product manager of the M10, and Stefan was director of overall product management. So they both moved up.
Yeah.
But if you actually look through this interview, there's a lot of really cool little tidbits about the M10 design and the move from the 240 that are really, really cool and not really listed in Leica's marketing stuff. This was an awesome conversation. So I highly recommend checking that interview out if you have the time.
You'll make the time.
Make the time.
Make the time. It's actually really cool.
And-
Well, how can they find that in Red Dot Forum? Go back to the screen, because I feel like it's you skipped that part.
Sorry. Okay. So what I did is I just went to the search function here, which is at the top of the page, and I actually just typed Stefan Daniel, and we've had different talks over the years, going back to 2010. I've known Stefan for a very, very long time, even before that. But if you do Leica M10 discussion with Stefan Daniel and Jesko van Onhausen,
There you go.
that is how you find it. This is also really fascinating if you want to see Leica's thinking when it came to the 240, the SL601, way, way back before they were launched, because in 2010, Stefan kind of spilled the beans and explained their whole strategy, and everyone ignored it for 5 years.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating in retrospect to actually read what he said, because he was very blunt about everything.
Yeah. Nice. That's awesome. I mean, Red Dot Forum has been a project of ours, but really David's for the last dozen years.
Yeah.
There's a lot of content on there that we've probably forgotten about
Hundreds of articles.
that are still relevant today and still really interesting in terms of the insight getting insight into Leica's product development and their mindset. Super, super cool.
Yeah, the other one that I think is really worth checking out, just to bring back to the S real quick, and it may come up, but S007 and
I don't know if you always say SL7. Well, the night shooting article is super cool.
the night shooting is pretty cool
love that
because this is like kind of round peg square hole. Like, can you really go out and do night street photography with a medium format digital camera? And the answer is yes. I did have this thought. Let's see. No. Where is it? I don't know. It's I know what it's called. 37.5 megapixels.
Oh, I know this one.
Yeah.
Just say sticking with, right? Was it
Yeah, sticking with. Okay, so
staying at. That's
so
what
why
it was.
is Leica staying at 37 megapixel? And I had a conversation with Dr. Volker Zimmer, who's head of R&D, and this was all kind of the really interesting insights. And this was talking about the sensor design that I mentioned earlier, and how Leica's sensors are far more advanced at that time than everyone else. And nobody was giving Leica the credit they were due.
Yeah.
So
Except for you.
highly recommend checking that out.
Yeah.
And it's so, I mean, I guess that's one of the things I've always loved about Leica is the accessibility of the people behind the products.
Like you and I were in Germany that one time, and the guy who designed all the SL lenses was just like hanging out.
Yeah.
Dietmar, and was like, "Oh yeah, I made that." What? It's so
We're
cool.
like, outside the Lights Museum or something.
Yeah, it's just
and we're
random,
having
yeah.
a conversation about like, oh, it has this. He's like, why would you need that? It does this. It's just very, very matter of fact.
Yeah.
And I always said back when, and I think it's a great loss for the industry as a whole, but Photokina, I used to go every 2 years. It's an awesome show in Cologne, Germany. I mean, I wouldn't get much sleep, and I was pretty much just in meetings all day, writing all night, and not sleeping for a week.
Yeah.
But what's so cool is, and people didn't even realize it, is they'd go up to the booth at Photokina and be like, oh, can I see the M10? And be like, okay, well, here's the M10. What lens do you want? Oh, here's the lens.
Yeah.
And what they don't realize is like, that's the head of R&D, or that's the designer of the lens, or the guy who did all the electronics for that camera. Like, they have the engineers at that time working at the booth. They're not like salespeople.
Yeah.
So these were the people that actually made all the things, but nobody realized it.
But
It's such a cool, and you can also see just how much pride they took in it.
Yes.
And how they
These
were
are real
like
people.
They're
Like,
real people
yeah.
that put in real work. In some cases, years of development into each of these products, and they lived and breathed these products. And it's just such a, I don't know. I've always liked that Leica was so accessible that you could talk to and be like, oh, I want to talk to the guy who wrote the software for that, and I want to find out about X, Y, and Z. And they tell you
can't do that
because,
nowadays.
well, I can't, not yet.
Not yet. Well, they'll come back.
Yeah.
But we haven't been to Germany in a while, so
Very, very cool.
yeah.
And another plug, if you haven't been to the factory in Germany,
You should go.
You gotta go. Stay in the Lights Hotel, eat in the cafe, and just, I mean, if you hang out in the Lights Cafe,
Yeah.
you will meet all these people because
true.
that's where they go for coffee.
They get their award. Well, they have award-winning pastries.
They have
and
award-winning,
pies there,
yeah.
I think, right?
Pastries and pies.
I'm gonna. Oh, Jose, you have something?
Yeah, I mean, we have like a couple more questions.
yeah, go.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay,
we've been
okay.
yapping
Yeah,
around.
Yeah.
This one's interesting. Is there an M camera that shares the original Q or SL601 sensor?
No,
Next.
Okay.
they're different sensor architectures.
Different.
Yeah, so this one is two different questions, but they're on the same topic.
Okay.
M9 monochrome, still a relevant camera.
Yes.
And then somebody said, I sold my M9 to upgrade to M10, but I still think about having the M9 back. If I can get one with the sensor replaced, is there a concern about its electronics and replacement / fixes if the screen breaks, let's say?
Complicated.
Leica can still CLA M9s. I just had one done like 2 weeks ago. So yeah, they can service them. I'm pretty sure all the parts, aside from the sensor, are still available. I
But
think
not
it's
the sensors. Sensors are
sensor, right? But if you have a replaced sensor M9, I don't see why not.
unless you break the sensor.
Yeah, well, let's hope you don't do that. But no, you just get one with a replaced sensor and then you're good, I think. Yeah, that wouldn't bother me. I mean, the M9 and the original Monochrom had developed a cult following. They are super mechanical and they're slow and they're clunky and they're fun. It's like using a typewriter, honestly. I mean, I get it. Wow. They're awesome.
Hold on. An M9,
Yes.
just like a typewriter.
Yes,
Josh
that's
Lehrer.
the slogan. I'm sure Leica, the folks at Leica will love to hear that. I mean, there's a like a steampunk nature almost. Like it's almost like shooting film in terms of the mindset you have to have, except it's digital.
Is it like an air-cooled Porsche? I mean,
Kind of like an airboat Porsche. I don't know if we're quite there yet.
No.
But it definitely
it's leaning that way.
I think they were underpriced for a long time and they've been going up steadily because I think they're worth it. I don't think it's unjustified and they become quite hard to find. And since it's one of the only cameras you can check the shutter count on, the ones with low shutter counts are really hard to find now, sub 5,000. So yeah, I mean, it's fun. I don't think it should be your main camera, considering that a used M9 and a used 240 are the same price.
I'd go for used
I'd get a used 240 from a practicality standpoint, but certainly it's a lot of fun if you've got a Leica collection or you got a couple M's and you want something just different and funky. Get a steel gray M9 or get an ME, the original ME with anthracite gray.
Very cool.
Super funky. Or an M9P in silver or black paint or whatever.
Black paint.
Yeah.
M9P and black paint. Ooh.
Yeah. Anyway.
What do you got,
else?
Jose?
That's it for now.
Okay.
What camera does Josh use to shoot cars?
I honestly use so many different ones, mostly because the nature of my job is such that I get to play with everything and anything. What I use the most is the SL2S with the 9280, just because I use a lot of long lenses for my car photography. The second most lens would be the 75 Noctilux, which I just am obsessed with. I have it on my desk all the time. I'm going to Europe in 2 weeks. I'm debating. If anyone is in Zurich or in Stuttgart, where else am I going? Or Munich, I will be there July 1st through 9th. If you want to buy me a beer and hang out,
There's great beer in Germany.
let me know. July 1st through 9th. Zurich, Stuttgart, Munich, and then anywhere else. I feel like wandering around. I'm not going to Wetzlar, unfortunately.
I'm hiking a mountain in Maine next week, so
If you're in Maine, if you
probably
want to
don't.
wander around the mountains of Maine, you'll find David. That's the reason. My point being is that's the reason our show schedule is a bit weird because I don't actually know what our next show is because David's out of town next week. Then I'm in Switzerland and Germany the following week. So our next show will be probably about a month from now. Is my sort of guess.
we're back to back in it
You're
here.
in Greenland, and it's
Greenland's in a month, yeah.
our schedule's a bit weird. But before we forget, I want to mention again that there is a spot, maybe two, available for our Scotland workshop in October. So if you're interested in hanging out with David and Kirsten in Scotland, please check it out. And it ties in really well with the LGSA meeting in Dublin, which follows that.
It does.
Yes.
Just a few days later.
Yes. I think we've talked about everything that's here.
I feel like
We're being super efficient, which is rare for us.
It is rare. How did we finish early?
It's not even 10 o'clock.
We talked about 1, 2, 3. Like we talked about 4 different systems, and yet actually covered it all.
We did. We were very well. I also talk really, really fast. So
Now that's what. By the way, because we've seen comments, if you're having trouble understanding Josh, you can actually watch in playback.
Josh mode.
Yeah, you can dial it back to like 0.75x and just like whoa, and then for me, you can do like 1.25x, and it's then you can speed me up and slow him down, and then we're about the same speed.
Yeah, you need 2x for David and 0.75x for Josh. Look, we have, that's why we work well together because we have our complementary insanity.
Quick question, Josh. Is the M9 Monochrom subject to the same sensor corrosion as the M9?
Yes, M9, M9P, ME, M Monochrom, S2, S006, SE006. All of those cameras have the same basic sensor architecture, and they all will have sensor corrosion eventually. So you would not want to buy any of those cameras with an original sensor unless it was super, super, super cheap.
We should also mention, just to loop back to that,
Yes.
with the S and buying used S lenses. You touched on it in previous episodes.
Okay.
But just the same way you don't want to get an M9 or whatever CCD-based camera without an upgraded sensor, you do not want to buy a used S lens that doesn't have a new focus motor in it. Be careful about the new focus motor.
Yeah,
right.
And you talk about that in your article on
I do.
S lenses. So
I do.
if you read David's S lens guide, we don't keep it a secret. It's right in there. And there's also stories on Reddit forum about the progression of that issue.
There is.
And the way Leica addressed it. So
Yes.
we're not shy about reporting the less than great news because it is relevant. So don't think we're just shilling all the good stuff here. Thankfully, at least a lot of these systemic issues Leica has addressed over time.
Yeah.
The sensor thing, they can't replace them anymore. That was outside of their control because they didn't make the sensor. So
But they do have the upgrade programs.
yeah, they do have an upgrade program, at least here in the States, where if you have a camera with corrosion, you can upgrade it through a Leica store,
Get an M10R.
get an M10R and M10 Monochrom at a nice discount. So that is, they haven't, they've acknowledged it. So what else is in the chat?
I don't know. What do we got?
Why would the screen break on an M9 if you dropped it? Maybe.
How long is the M10P CLA taking?
Yeah.
It's hard to say. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't keep track of them that closely, and I send repairs in batches most of the time. It depends on also what needs to be done. If there's a part that's on back order, they could take longer. If it's a basic calibration and cleaning, it could take 4 weeks. You'd have to defer to like a customer care for that since we don't service cameras ourselves.
People are asking about the workshop with Josh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
The Josh workshop.
If you didn't catch us last week, Yes.
Oh,
For all of my colleagues who dared to doubt me,
me.
I did not. I did not.
yes, Jose didn't. He's smart. When I do these super technical shows, or excuse me, when we do the testing that I do before we do these super technical shows, sorry, it's just me. There's no one else in the room. He's a hologram. Like I can just scroll right through him. So I do a lot of testing beforehand. So, for example, I'll gather up every single 35mm M lens, thanks to the help of you guys loaning me stuff, and test them all side by side for sharpness, chromatic aberration, corner performance, bokeh, vignetting, all these things. And I realized over time that for Leica nerds like myself, who they may actually find that process interesting. So what I have proposed and have been getting some interest from the last show is essentially a nerding out with Josh lens and camera testing workshop, which would be a weekend long, maybe plus half a Friday workshop dedicated to testing, sort of anthologies of lenses and cameras, learning how to test, good methodology, and then learning how to evaluate the results of the test to understand what the lenses and the cameras are doing, how to use that with lenses and cameras you already own or are considering to build out your kit. So it would be the nerdiest, coolest experience. If you like that stuff, I'd have all kinds of cool vintage and modern stuff. We'd have different setups going. It'd be a small group, somewhere between 5 to 8 people, here in Miami. So nothing on the books yet. I don't have any info yet. I need to know if people are interested. I had said, email me last week if you were interested in that workshop. And I'll say it again. If you're interested, if you haven't already reached out, and thank you to the people that did, just email either info@leicastoremiami.com or josh@leicastoremiami.com and let me know you want to nerd out and do some super geeky lens testing. This is not a workshop about being creative, unless this is expressing my creativity. And I'll make David go. He'll be there. And I'll make Jose be there too.
Somebody has to go to Starbucks and bring coffee back for everybody.
Exactly. Or make coffee.
But it'll be a lot of
make
fun.
coffee, yeah.
It'll be, he is an expert barista now. So it'll be something that if you're really interested in that kind of stuff, it'll be a lot of fun. If you find that boring and dry, you won't enjoy it. If the thought of 2 days in a room with me, being as manic as I am on this show, scares you, you should probably not go. Anyway, thanks for reminding me, because that is something that I'm working on. So if you're interested, just let us know. And don't forget about Scotland as well.
Yeah.
And
I also saw a comment here
Yes.
about the old favorites. Jose, can you read that? Just because I
Yeah.
want to be looking over there.
We do have an episode on this, but yeah, old favorites. What about analog M's? I know you have an episode, but what about but how about the market changes since then? Does an M6 or M7 still make sense?
I mean, they have been. Josh can answer this in more detail, but analog M's, I think, haven't had this level of interest since there was only analog M's. Like it seems like explosive growth of everybody's looking for an M6 or an MP or an M3, etc. They are more in demand than ever. And Josh, maybe you can answer specifically like what the market's doing right now.
well, the problem is that analog M's were severely undervalued in the pre-owned market for a very, very long time. And once the supply of new cameras started to become difficult to, or started to dry up, and the market overall for shooting film, just in general, has increased dramatically, the demand for these analog M's has increased dramatically as well, and that's driven the pricing up. I don't think they're overpriced. I think they just have been so underpriced for so long. They were due for a dramatic shift. So I love analog M's for their mechanical nature. I love them for their timelessness. They're beautiful. They feel amazing in your hand. And I'm obsessed with them. Now, for me, I am fanatic about the quality of the analog M's that we offer. So every single analog M that we get, short of maybe something very, very new, like a new MP or MA, like a recently sold one, is going to go back to Germany, to the factory, for a full service. We're talking $800 to $1,500 or more for MP viewfinder optics, if they can do it. Sometimes I'll swap in 0.58 or 0.85 finders, new shutters, whatever it takes. And it takes months and months and months and months and months. 6 months, costs a small fortune. But I am so proud of what the market has become and of the interest that has been coming up for these beautiful pieces of equipment that, to me, if I'm going to put one through the store, it's got to be as good as it could possibly be.
And you're talking about cameras that have decades more of longevity after they've had a full service.
Or longer. I mean, you look at an M3, 70 years old. You can use it for another 70 years.
That is amazing. I mean, I know we talked about this in our analog episode, but that is absolutely mind-bogglingly incredible that you have a mechanical item like that that still has relevance today,
yeah,
over 60 years later, and once serviced, can be in service for another 50 years.
Not only relevant, but if you have an M, if you have any digital M, you can use an analog M. The rangefinder, frame lines, the whole operational concept is exactly the same, except instead of a screen, you have an ISO dial and you're just popping film in there. So
it's very cool.
The reality is, though, if you are going to get into analog M, you have the first question you need to ask yourself is, do you want a meter or not?
Watch our analog M episode. Covers all.
I just wanted to get that out of the way. So because someone may ask, like, should I get an M6 or
Yeah,
M4?
yeah.
We have an analog episode.
Watch it.
I had so much fun making that show. I may one day redo that with all of our new cameras and stuff.
For sure.
But yeah, super, super cool. Thank you, Stuart.
Jose, I saw a couple
we
more
have-
questions coming in.
Yeah, I think we have a cool question, maybe, I guess, to end it.
Yeah.
For David, what is the most popular camera system in your photo adventures?
For landscape, these days it's been the SL system, mostly the SL2. I still do have people shooting with the SL601. My last workshop, I had two, or in Patagonia, there was two S's, an S007 and an S3. And SL2s, Q2s are also remarkably popular, even for people that have other camera systems. And I'm also seeing M10 Monochrom, M10s, M11s. The interesting thing that's happening in the world of Leica is that way back when there was just, M's and R's and compacts in the film days, it was very, I would say, more clearly delineated that an M was for street photography and travel and reportage, and an R system was, for like landscape or fashion or portraiture and whatever. And even in the early days of digital, an M versus the S was more clearly defined. These days, all these different cameras can pull double, triple, quadruple duty. So I can go and take an SL with a 24-90 and do street photography with that, just as I could do landscape photography with an M10R. They both are equally good at doing that thing that you want to do, but you just have to figure out your priorities, what you're looking for, and sort of the make or break. So if you absolutely need weather sealing, the M is not the best choice. A Q2 or an SL2 or an S are going to be your best choices. If you're looking for something more compact and you want certainly access to the catalog of lenses, an M is going to be a better choice. So there's no, I guess you can watch our It Depends episode, because my answer is going to be ultimately, it depends.
Watch the It Depends episode.
The good news is, if you do ever, for those who have done it already, you know this, if you ever come on a future workshop with us, you'll know that we do one-on-one Zoom calls before the workshop, in the weeks leading up to the workshop, to get you prepped, and we do a gear breakdown and kind of give a rundown of what do you have, what are you thinking of using, okay, you should bring this, you shouldn't bring that, you may want to consider this as well, and we kind of go through the whole process to make sure that everyone is set up properly for the photo adventure. And we don't usually say, oh, you can't use that. It's just say, sure, you can use that. You might also consider this.
Yeah.
So we really try to take a pretty hands-on consultative approach to making sure that even your packing is on point, not just when you get there. So hopefully that answers the question. But to the point, the most common that we see is the SL system. And then after that, it sort of is distributed evenly amongst all the other systems.
I think that's a good way to end it. Yeah, I've been watching. This is all good here.
All good?
Yeah.
All right. Just to wrap up, what we talked about here hopefully has been a value with talking about this one step back, previous generation, what we call old favorites, because I love the S007. I love the SL601. I love the M10. these are cameras that I have fallen in love with, stayed in love with, and just because, we've got new hotness on the market with SL2, Q2, M11, and we do focus on those because I think there's a lot of uncertainty. They're new systems, newer systems, and we're trying to cover the new things to try to help people make decisions. Is it worth upgrading? Should you keep hold of your other system, or should you move forward? It doesn't negate the high quality that we have with this generation. I'd say the class of 2015/17
Yes.
is one of Leica's absolute best when you look at kind of the anthology of Leica.
Yeah.
And it is incredible when you identify how many amazing systems they engineered in a very short period of time simultaneously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just have to give kudos to Leica, to the engineering, to come up with what I consider very long-lasting digital designs. Because to answer the question at the top of the show, and I'm just going to ask you this.
Yeah.
Are these cameras relevant in 2022?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Usable, serviceable, available, supported by accessories and a wide range of lenses. I say go for it.
Yeah. And a pretty active marketplace as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But
Because
that's why I said available, because they're
Available,
they're-
yeah.
they're available.
So I think that's kind of been our point of doing the show. One, to prove that, we're not just always trying to, push the latest and greatest. Yes, we get excited because we're big photo nerds and Leica nerds. And of course,
yes.
of course, we're into like the latest and greatest and all the new innovations. But that doesn't lessen our continued support and enthusiasm for these products, both in our personal lives as well as in the used market and all that, and our customers. So, yeah.
I mean, we have the privilege of using so much stuff at the store, and sometimes I'll grab a 240 just because,
Yeah.
it's different, it's cool, or 777 or a CL or something, and
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
fun.
That's fun. One of the fun parts of our job.
Although usually you're grabbing an M10P. I know you. Because usually if we're looking for an M10P, where's the M10P? Jose's got it. So I know that for a fact.
Yes.
I know
yes,
it.
yes. That's hilarious.
Come clean, Jose. Come clean.
Yep, yep.
Sign us off, David.
All right. Well, thanks again for tuning in to yet another exciting edition of Red Dot Forum Camera Talk, our now 51st episode. We have survived this long. Always, big thanks to Josh. Big thanks to Jose. Kirsten's at a wedding right now, but big thanks to her for being awesome. And as always, huge thanks to you guys out there in the internet verse of watching us on the YouTube and spending your Saturday evening with us. We truly appreciate it. We're honored. And it's always fun for us to meet out in the wild and hear your feedback. If you have questions, drop it in the comments. This video will go into archive format on Red Dot Forum. If you're looking for any of our previous 50 episodes, you can do so by checking out our Red Dot Forum Camera Talk playlist on Red Dot Forum Camera Talk's YouTube channel. And you can find information on everything Leica, although there's still more great stuff to come.
There's so much to cover still.
If you're not already subscribed, please do so. Click the notification so you know when we post new content like this. And make sure to give us a thumbs up because, it's nice for us. We like it.
Makes us feel warm and fuzzy inside.
Makes us feel warm and fuzzy. And we will hopefully know when we're doing our next episode.
Soonish.
Hopefully.
Stay tuned soonish.
Hopefully Josh survives his trip to Germany and Switzerland.
Oh, it's going to be great.
And doesn't go too fast in the Autobahn.
Yeah, no promises.
Yeah, no promises. And hopefully I don't fall off a mountain. So, listen.
All right, everyone.
We're doing our thing. We will see you hopefully in a few weeks. We will be publishing and sending out an alert when we do so. So you'll know a few days at least beforehand when we're doing our next episode. If you have ideas for content or if you have general questions, you can send it to our YouTube at red.forum.com email. And yeah, that's about it.
See y'all next time.
Until then,
Good night, guys.
we'll see you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.